My name is Catherine Parker, 34 years old, and until last week I thought 12 years of loyalty to Quantum Solutions meant something. I architected the software that won us the $80 million Westfield Technologies contract, the same contract with the key person clause that specifically required my oversight. I never imagined my boss Garrett would slide my performance review across his desk with those words. If you're watching this and have ever been undervalued at work, drop a comment below about what happened. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of professionals who know their worth. I joined Quantum Solutions fresh out of graduate school with my computer science degree. Over 12 years, I worked my way up from junior developer to lead software architect. My specialty became enterprise integration systems for financial institutions, a complex projects that required both technical expertise and careful relationship management with clients. My track record spoke for itself. 8 major clients brought in during my tenure, 3 groundbreaking solutions that became company standards, and mentorship of more than 20 junior developers who now held senior positions themselves. You know you're the backbone of this place, right? My friend Stephanie Rodriguez would tell me during our coffee breaks. Stephanie was our head of client relations, and we had formed a tight bond over the years. Without you, half these projects would collapse. I always brushed off her compliments. The team makes it happen. I just guide the ship. But deep down, I knew my value, especially with Westfield Technologies, our biggest client. Harold Bennett, Westfield's CEO, had specifically requested me as lead architect for their complete system overhaul. The contract was worth $80 million over 5 years, the largest in our company's history. I still remember the contract negotiations. Harold had been adamant about one thing. We need guarantees that Catherine will remain the lead on this, he insisted to our executives. Her understanding of our industry is irreplaceable. That's when the key person clause was written into the contract. It explicitly stated that I would personally oversee all major development phases. If I were to leave or be removed from the project, Westfield would have the right to reconsider the entire agreement. At the time, it seemed like a formality. I had no plans to leave, and Quantum had always made me feel valued. My relationship with my boss, Garrett Thompson, had always been professional and respectful. He was the VP of development hired about 3 years ago, when our company started rapid expansion. Things began to shift subtly 6 months ago when Garrett hired Trevor Williams, a 26-year-old developer fresh from a Silicon Valley startup. Trevor was talented but inexperienced with enterprise systems. I was assigned to train him on our architectures and methodologies. He's got potential, Garrett told me. Take him under your wing. I did exactly that. Trevor was eager to learn, and I shared everything I knew. I included him in client meetings, explained our design principles, and helped him understand the complexities of financial systems integration. But soon I noticed that Trevor was being invited to executive meetings I wasn't part of. He began casually mentioning conversations with Garrett about future directions for projects I was leading. Garrett thinks we should pivot to microservices architecture for the next phase, Trevor would say about decisions I should have been consulted on first. Stephanie noticed it too. Watch your back with that kid, she warned during lunch one day. Something doesn't feel right about how Garrett keeps promoting him. I dismissed her concerns. Trevor's good, and besides, this company knows what I bring to the table. The Westfield project was entering its 2nd year, and everything was on track. My team had delivered the first phase on time and under budget. Harold had personally called to express his satisfaction. This is exactly why we wanted you on this, Catherine, he said. No one else understands our needs like you do. With this kind of feedback, I walked into my annual performance review confident. The company had just announced record profits largely due to the Westfield contract. My team was performing excellently. I had even prepared a short presentation on my achievements and goals for the coming year. I knocked on Garrett's office door at our scheduled time, surprised to see Trevor sitting in one of the chairs facing Garrett's desk. "Come in, Catherine," Garrett said, his voice strangely formal. "Have a seat. Trevor will be joining us today." Something felt off immediately. Trevor wouldn't meet my eyes, and Garrett's usually casual demeanor had been replaced with a stiff, almost rehearsed presentation. But I sat down, still holding on to my confidence in my work and value to the company. I had no idea my entire career was about to be upended. Garrett's office had always felt welcoming before, with its wall of awards and photos of company retreats. Today it felt cold and corporate. The blinds were partially closed, casting striped shadows across the polished desk, where Garrett sat with perfect posture, Trevor fidgeting slightly beside him. Catherine, we've been reviewing departmental structure. Garrett began without any of the usual small talk. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit I'd observed whenever he delivered bad news to clients. I nodded, waiting for him to continue while wondering why Trevor was present for my performance review. Garrett slid a folder across the desk. Here's your performance assessment for the year. I opened it, expecting to see the usual exceeds expectations ratings. Instead, I found mostly meets expectations with a recommended annual increase of only 2%, barely keeping pace with inflation. My heart sank as I flipped through the pages, seeing comments about adequate performance and meeting basic requirements where there should have been recognition of my exceptional contributions. I don't understand, I said, looking up from the document. The Westfield implementation is ahead of schedule. Client satisfaction ratings are at 97%. My team has the highest productivity metrics in the department. Garrett cleared his throat. Catherine, you've been with us a long time, and we appreciate your historical contributions. But the industry is changing rapidly, and we need to evolve. He gestured toward Trevor, who finally looked up with an uncomfortable smile. Trevor represents the future direction of our technical leadership, Garrett continued. He brings fresh perspectives and innovative approaches that align with where we want to go. I felt my face flush. Trevor has been with the company for 6 months. I've been leading these projects for years. Garrett's expression hardened. That's precisely the issue, Catherine. We're not paying for your experience anymore. The words hit like a physical blow. Not paying for my experience. My experience was exactly what had secured our biggest contract and kept our most valuable clients happy. Effective next week, Trevor will be taking over as lead architect on all current projects, including Westfield. Garrett said, his tone matter of fact. You'll transition to a supporting role on his team. I must have looked as shocked as I felt because Trevor jumped in nervously. I'm really looking forward to working together in this new capacity, Catherine. Your institutional knowledge will be invaluable. Institutional knowledge. Like I was some outdated database to be referenced occasionally. Trevor will be implementing several new methodologies, Garrett continued, and bringing costs down significantly. His compensation package is frankly much more aligned with our budget goals. The implication was clear: Trevor would do my job for half my salary, and the company would pocket the difference. What about the Westfield contract? I asked, finding my voice again. Harold specifically requested me as lead architect. There's a key person clause. For a brief moment, uncertainty flashed across Garrett's face before he regained his composure. Harold understands that companies evolve. Trevor has already been introduced to the Westfield team and has made an excellent impression. That was news to me. I'd been on every Westfield call and meeting. They must have arranged separate introductions behind my back. Your new role will come with adjusted compensation, of course. Garrett added, sliding another document toward me. We believe it's commensurate with the reduced responsibilities. I glanced at the number and nearly gasped. It represented a 30% reduction from my current salary. After 12 years of loyalty and consistent results, they were cutting my pay by nearly a third and expecting me to train my replacement. This is effective immediately, I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. We'll begin transition next week, Garrett replied. We'd like you to bring Trevor up to speed on all active projects by the end of the month. I closed the folder and placed it back on the desk, buying time to compose myself. Showing weakness now would only make this humiliation complete. I'll need to review these documents and consider my options, I said finally. Garrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, but we'll need your decision by tomorrow. The company is moving forward with these changes, either way. I stood up, legs feeling strangely numb. Is there anything else for today? No, that covers everything, Garrett said already, turning his attention to his computer screen, dismissing me. Trevor, stay behind, please. We need to discuss the roadmap announcement. I walked out of the office in a daze, aware of curious glances from colleagues as I passed. My face must have betrayed something of what had just happened. I headed straight for the elevator, needing to escape before emotion overwhelmed me. Stephanie caught me just as the elevator doors were opening. Catherine, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head, unable to speak, as we stepped into the empty elevator. That bad? She asked quietly. Worse, I managed to say. They're replacing me with Trevor, cutting my salary by 30% to stay on in a support role. Stephanie's eyes widened. They cannot be serious. After everything you've done, The Westfield project alone should have earned you a promotion. The elevator reached the ground floor and we walked toward the parking garage. Apparently they're not paying for experience anymore, I quoted bitterly. Trevor is the future, and I'm just expensive overhead. This is about Garrett's cost-cutting bonus, isn't it? Stephanie said. Julia mentioned the executives get incentives for reducing department expenses. That made too much sense. Replace an experienced, well-paid architect with a newcomer at half the salary, claim it's about innovation, and pocket a bonus for saving the company money. The drive home passed in a blur. 12 years of dedication dismissed in a 15-minute meeting. I had given everything to Quantum Solutions, sacrificed weekends and evenings delayed, starting a family, put the company's needs above my own time and again, and this was my reward being pushed aside for someone cheaper. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the shock was giving way to something else, a slow, burning anger that would soon change everything. I barely remember the drive home. Muscle memory guided me through familiar streets while my mind replayed the meeting over and over, the condescension in Garrett's voice, Trevor's uncomfortable smile, the insulting offer letter with its dramatic salary reduction. My condo felt unusually quiet as I dropped my laptop bag and sank onto the couch. For years I had decorated this place with little personal touches between long work hours, building a home I rarely got to enjoy. Photos from company events sat on shelves alongside technical awards I had earned for Quantum. The irony wasn't lost on me. The first tears came without warning, hot and angry. I had given that company my best years. I had believed we were building something important together. The betrayal cut deep, not just professionally but personally. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. Are you okay? Call me if you need to talk. I appreciated her concern, but wasn't ready to discuss what happened. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and tried to think logically about my options. Stay and accept the demotion. Look for another position. The tech industry was known for valuing youth and novelty over experience, despite all evidence that complex projects needed veteran leadership. Around 9 that evening, my phone rang. Stephanie. I was worried when you didn't respond to my texts, she said, when I answered. Sorry. I needed some time to process. I get it, she said. Listen, I heard some things after you left that you should know. I sat up straighter. What kind of things? This isn't just about you. The executive team is implementing massive cost-cutting across all senior positions. Garrett gets a 10% bonus on every dollar he saves on department payroll. So I'm being demoted because Garrett wants a bonus. The injustice was staggering. Partly, Stephanie continued. But there's more. Apparently Trevor has been taking credit for some of your architectural innovations in meetings with the executive team. He's been positioning himself as the visionary while suggesting you're stuck in outdated methodologies. My grip tightened on the phone. That little snake. I taught him everything he knows about enterprise systems. I know. Everyone who actually works with you knows. But Garrett has been selling this narrative to Julia and the board for months. Julia Mason was our CEO, someone I had worked with closely in the company's early days. I thought we had mutual respect, but apparently that hadn't been enough to question Garrett's characterization of my contributions. After talking with Stephanie, I pulled out my employment contract and the Westfield agreement. I needed to understand exactly where I stood legally. The employment contract was fairly standard, with non-compete and confidentiality clauses that would limit my ability to immediately work for competitors. But the Westfield contract contained something much more interesting. The key person clause was more specific than I remembered. Quantum Solutions guarantees that Catherine Parker shall serve as lead architect for all phases of the project described herein. Should Catherine Parker cease to serve in this capacity for any reason, Westfield Technologies reserves the right to immediately review and potentially terminate this agreement with minimal notice, with all initial phase payments considered, non-refundable, and additional compensation due, as specified in Section 8.3. I pulled up Section 8.3, which detailed the penalty clauses for early termination. The numbers were significant. If Westfield terminated due to a breach like removing me from the project, Quantum would have to refund 30% of all payments received and forfeit all future payments, while still delivering all work completed to date. Given that Westfield had already paid nearly $20 million on the $80 million contract, the financial penalty would be devastating. $6 million in refunds, plus the loss of $60 million in future revenue. My mind raced as I considered the implications. Quantum was about to breach a major contract condition, potentially triggering millions in penalties, and they didn't even realize it. Or worse, Garrett knew, and didn't care, assuming Westfield wouldn't enforce the clause. But I knew Harold Bennett. He was a stickler for contract terms and had specifically insisted on my involvement. If he learned I was being demoted, he would absolutely hold Quantum accountable. I faced a moral dilemma. Should I warn the company about their oversight? My loyalty argued yes, but they had shown no loyalty to me. They were trying to push me out after years of dedicated service to save money and earn Garrett a bonus. I decided to sleep on it. I turned off my phone to avoid any more disturbing revelations or demands from Quantum. Tomorrow would be soon enough to decide my next move. Before bed, I began assembling a portfolio of my work. Every project I had led, every innovation I had introduced, every client relationship I had nurtured. If I needed to find a new position, I wanted to be prepared. And if I decided to fight this battle, I needed ammunition. I also drafted a carefully worded email to Harold at Westfield, not mentioning any issues but requesting a meeting to discuss project progress and future phases. I didn't send it yet, but having it ready gave me a sense of control. That night I slept fitfully, dreaming of boardrooms and betrayals. But somewhere in those turbulent hours, determination replaced despair. I had spent years solving complex technical problems. This was just another problem to solve, albeit a personal one. By morning, I had the beginnings of a plan. I would not warn Quantum about their contract oversight. I would not accept the demotion quietly. I would take control of my career and ensure that my experience was properly valued either at Quantum or elsewhere. The power dynamic was about to shift, though I had no idea just how dramatically. The insistent buzzing of my phone dragged me from sleep. Squinting at the bedside clock, I saw it was just past 7 in the morning. Who would be calling this early? When I picked up my phone, the screen lit up with notifications. 87 missed calls, 32 voicemails, 45 text messages, all since I had turned off my phone last night. Most of the calls were from Garrett, others from Julia Mason, our CEO. Several from numbers I didn't recognize but suspected belonged to other executives, or perhaps the legal team. The first voicemail, time-stamped 8:30 last night, was from Garrett, his voice casual. "Catherine, just following up on our discussion today. Give me a call when you get a chance." By the 10th voicemail, around midnight, his tone had changed dramatically. "Catherine, this is extremely urgent. We need to discuss the Westfield situation immediately. Call me back regardless of the time." The latest message from Julia herself at 6:15 this morning was blunt. "Catherine, this is Julia Mason. There appears to be a significant misunderstanding regarding your role at Quantum. Westfield has called an emergency meeting for 9 a.m. and is threatening to pull their contract. We need to speak before then. Please call my private line as soon as you get this." The text messages told a similar story of escalating panic. Garrett, 9:13 p.m. "Need to clarify some details about your transition. Call me." Garrett, 1:12, 2 p.m. "Harold Bennett called me directly. Very concerned about rumors you're leaving the Westfield project. Critical we talk tonight." Garrett, 1:35 a.m. "This is a serious situation. Westfield Legal has been in contact. Call me." Julia, 6:30 a.m. "Catherine, we're prepared to discuss a promotion and substantial raise. VP level. Your own team. Please call before the Westfield meeting." I sat in bed reading through the messages with growing amazement. It seemed that someone had informed Westfield about my potential removal from their project, and they had reacted exactly as I would have predicted, with immediate legal pressure. But I hadn't contacted them yet. My email to Harold remained unsent in my drafts folder. Then a text from Stephanie explained everything. "Hope you're okay. FYI, Trevor mentioned to Kyle from Westfield during their golf game that he's taking over their project next week." Kyle called Harold immediately. "All hell breaking loose here. Call me when you can." So Trevor's arrogance had accelerated the timeline. He had casually mentioned his promotion to a Westfield executive, not realizing the contractual implications. Now Quantum was in panic mode. I took my time showering and getting dressed deliberately, not responding to any messages yet. My leverage had just increased exponentially, and I intended to use it wisely. When I finally called Stephanie around 8, she answered immediately. "The office is in complete chaos," she said without preamble. Julia has been here all night with the legal team. Garrett looks like he's about to have a stroke. What exactly happened? I asked, wanting to hear the full story. After Trevor told Kyle he was taking over, Kyle called Harold. Harold apparently went ballistic and called Garrett, directly mentioning something about a key person clause and material breach of contract. Then Westfield's lawyers got involved and scheduled an emergency meeting for this morning. They're talking about pulling the entire $80 million contract if you're removed from the project. I couldn't help but smile. Harold was using the exact leverage I had identified last night. Where do things stand now? I asked. Julia has overridden Garrett completely. They're prepared to offer you whatever it takes to keep you on the Westfield project. VP of Architecture Massive. Raise your own team reporting directly to you. Garrett is trying to save face by claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that he never intended to fully remove you from the project. I considered my options. I could leverage this crisis to secure a better position at Quantum, or I could explore opportunities elsewhere, possibly even at Westfield itself. I have a meeting with Harold at 10, I told Stephanie. It was a decision made in the moment, but it felt right. Catherine Julia will explode if she finds out you're meeting with Westfield directly right now. I'm still officially lead architect on their project. It's perfectly appropriate for me to meet with the client, I replied calmly. Besides, I'm not an employee meeting with a client. I'm a professional assessing my options. After hanging up with Stephanie, I sent a brief message to Julia. Received your messages. Taking time to consider my position. We'll be in touch this afternoon. Then I sent the email I had drafted to Harold requesting a meeting. His response came within minutes, suggesting we meet at 10 at a coffee shop near the Westfield offices. I spent the next hour organizing my thoughts and preparing a portfolio of my contributions to the Westfield project. I wasn't sure yet what I wanted from this situation, but I intended to approach it from a position of strength. Harold was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, his usually jovial face serious. He stood to greet me with a firm handshake. Catherine, thank you for meeting on such short notice. Of course, Harold. I understand there's some concern about the project. He gestured for me to sit. That's putting it mildly. Kyle tells me you're being replaced as lead architect. Is that accurate? I chose my words carefully. Quantum appears to be considering some organizational changes. Nothing has been finalized. Harold frowned. That's not what Kyle understood from his conversation with Trevor Williams. He got the distinct impression you were being removed effective next week. Trevor may have been premature in his statements, I replied diplomatically. Catherine, Harold said, leaning forward, let me be direct. We signed with Quantum specifically because of you. The key person clause wasn't a formality for us. It was a fundamental condition. Our systems are too critical to entrust to someone without your level of experience, regardless of how talented they might be. I nodded. I appreciate your confidence in me, Harold. It's more than confidence. It's a contractual requirement. He pulled out a copy of the same contract I had reviewed last night. Section 4.7 is explicit. If you're removed as lead architect, we have grounds to terminate the entire agreement with penalties payable to us. I'm aware of the clause, I acknowledged. Harold studied me for a moment. You don't seem particularly surprised by any of this. Did you know Quantum was planning to replace you? I was informed yesterday during my performance review, I admitted. It was unexpected. Harold's expression darkened, and they were aware of the key person clause when they made this decision. I reminded them of it, I said. The response suggested they didn't consider it a significant concern. Harold shook his head in disbelief. $80 million isn't a significant concern. What were they thinking? Cost-cutting, apparently, I replied. My experience comes with a price tag they're no longer willing to pay. Something like anger flashed in Harold's eyes. That's remarkably short-sighted of them. He paused, then added more gently. Catherine, I hope you know how valued your work is at Westfield. If your current employer doesn't appreciate your expertise, others certainly would. The implication was clear, but I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. I'm still processing yesterday's events, Harold. No decisions have been made. I understand, but I want to be transparent. We will not proceed with this project without you leading it. That's non-negotiable. As we wrapped up our meeting, Harold added, the emergency meeting with Quantum is in 30 minutes. Would you like me to avoid mentioning that we spoke? I considered this. No need for secrecy. You can mention we discussed project status, which is true. I'd prefer to handle the details of my employment situation directly with Quantum. Fair enough, Harold agreed. And Catherine. Whatever you decide, I hope it values your contributions appropriately. I left the coffee shop feeling oddly light. For the first time since yesterday's devastating meeting, I felt in control. Now it was time to face Quantum and determine whether our relationship had any future at all. At 1:30 that afternoon, I walked into Quantum Solutions headquarters. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me, and she immediately picked up her phone, whispering urgently into the receiver. Word of my arrival spread through the office like wildfire. Heads turned as I passed conversations, halted mid-sentence, and a palpable tension filled the air. Stephanie intercepted me near the elevators. "You're actually here," she whispered. "Julia has been trying to reach you all morning." "I know," I replied calmly. "I'm ready to meet with her now." Stephanie's eyes sparkled with something between admiration and concern. "Conference room A. The entire executive team is waiting. They've been in there since the Westfield meeting ended." "How did that go?" I asked. "From what I heard, disastrous for us. Harold made it absolutely clear that without you there is no contract." She squeezed my arm. "Give them hell, Catherine." I straightened my jacket and headed for the conference room. Yesterday, I had felt powerless and betrayed. Today, I would negotiate from a position of strength. When I opened the door, 6 pairs of eyes turned to me. Julia Mason sat at the head of the table, flanked by our CFO David Wilson and CTO Peter Shaw. Garrett sat further down, looking pale and disheveled as if he hadn't slept. 2 members of our legal team completed the group. Trevor was notably absent. Catherine Julia stood to greet me, her tone carefully cordial. "Thank you for coming in. Please have a seat." I chose a chair directly across from Garrett, meeting his gaze briefly before turning my attention to Julia. "I understand there's been some confusion regarding my role at Quantum." Julia cleared her throat. "Yes, a most unfortunate misunderstanding. Garrett was exploring theoretical departmental restructuring, but no final decisions had been made regarding your position." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not how it was presented to me yesterday." Garrett shifted uncomfortably but remained silent as Julia continued. "Clearly there was a serious communication failure," she said. "One that we deeply regret. Your value to this company, particularly with respect to the Westfield contract, cannot be overstated." And yet I replied I was explicitly told that my experience was no longer worth paying for and that Trevor would be taking over my projects effective next week. David, the CFO, winced visibly. That messaging was completely unauthorized and inappropriate. "It was delivered by my direct supervisor in an official performance review," I countered, "with documentation." I placed the folder Garrett had given me on the table, including a 30% reduction in compensation. Julia's expression hardened as she glanced at Garrett. "This is not at all what was discussed at the executive level. We were exploring ways to expand our architectural leadership team, not replace you." "Harold Bennett made Westfield's position very clear this morning," I said. "The key person clause in their contract is non-negotiable." "We understand that now," Julia replied, "which is why we want to offer you a promotion that reflects your true value to Quantum." She slid a document across the table. "Vice President of Enterprise Architecture, a 60% salary increase from your current compensation, direct reporting line to me with full autonomy over your team structure." I took the document but didn't open it immediately. "And Garrett." Julia's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried an edge. "Garrett will be focusing on other areas of the business going forward. Your department would operate independently of his oversight." I finally opened the folder and scanned the offer. The terms were impressive, far better than anything I had anticipated before yesterday's disastrous review. It was clear that panic had driven them to extraordinary generosity. "This is a substantial offer," I acknowledged. "We should have recognized your contributions sooner," Julia said. "This crisis has made your value abundantly clear." "We don't want to lose you, Catherine." I thought about the 12 years I had given to Quantum, about the projects I had led and the relationships I had built, about how quickly they had been willing to discard me to save money, and how quickly they had reversed course when threatened with consequences. "I'll need 24 hours to consider this offer," I said finally. Julia looked surprised. "You're considering not accepting?" "I'm considering all my options," I replied evenly, as any professional would when their position has been so fundamentally questioned. What would make this offer more attractive? David asked, clearly concerned about the financial implications of losing the Westfield contract. This isn't about the terms, I explained. It's about trust. Yesterday I was considered disposable. Today I'm suddenly indispensable. That's a lot to process in 24 hours. Julia nodded slowly. I understand. We've given you reason to question our commitment. Take the time you need. But please know that we genuinely want you to stay and lead our enterprise architecture going forward. As I stood to leave, Garrett finally spoke. Catherine, for what it's worth, I made a terrible mistake. I failed to recognize your true value and the contractual implications of the changes I proposed. His apology sounded rehearsed and hollow. Too little, too late. 24 hours, I repeated, gathering my things. I'll have my decision tomorrow. As I left the conference room, Stephanie was waiting nearby, trying and failing to look like she hadn't been eavesdropping. Well, she prompted, as we walked toward her office. They offered me VP of Enterprise Architecture, 60% raise, direct reporting line to Julia. Stephanie's jaw dropped. Holy shit, are you going to take it? I don't know, I admitted, as we closed her office door behind us. Part of me wants to see Garrett's face every day, knowing he tried to push me out and ended up getting me promoted above him. That would be deliciously satisfying, Stephanie agreed. But I'm not sure I can trust them anymore. They were perfectly willing to demote me yesterday. What happens when the Westfield contract ends, when Harold isn't protecting me anymore? Stephanie nodded thoughtfully. Valid concerns. What are your other options? Harold made it pretty clear this morning that Westfield would be interested in bringing me on directly. You'd leave Quantum. Stephanie seemed surprised. After 12 years during which they clearly took me for granted, I pointed out. Besides, maybe it's time for a change. New challenges, new environment. Have you talked to Harold about specific opportunities? Not yet. I wanted to hear Quantum's offer first. Smart, Stephanie nodded. Always negotiate from a position of strength. We were interrupted by a knock on the door. When Stephanie called, "Come in," Trevor poked his head in, looking uncomfortable. Catherine, can I talk to you for a minute? Stephanie raised her eyebrows at me, and I nodded slightly. I'll catch up with you later, I told her. As Stephanie left, Trevor took the seat across from me, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. I owe you an apology, he began. I never intended for things to happen this way. Which part? I asked. Taking credit for my work with executives, positioning yourself to replace me, or just mentioning your promotion to Westfield prematurely. He had the grace to look ashamed. I got caught up in the opportunity Garrett presented. He made it sound like you were ready to step back, that you'd been consulted. By the time I realized that wasn't true, things were already in motion. And the golf game with Kyle. Trevor winced. A stupid mistake. I was excited about the promotion and mentioned it without thinking about the implications. I never imagined it would blow up like this. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Trevor was young and ambitious, manipulated by Garrett into becoming an unwitting accomplice. Some advice: Trevor's success built on undermining others never lasts. True leadership means lifting people up, not stepping on them to climb higher. He nodded earnestly. I'm learning that the hard way. For what it's worth, everything I know about enterprise architecture I learned from you. You're the best in the business, and I was an idiot to think I could replace you after 6 months. His sincerity seemed genuine, but I had more important decisions to focus on than Trevor's professional development. I need to make some calls, I said effectively, ending our conversation. As Trevor left, I pulled out my phone and dialed Harold's number. It was time to understand all my options before making any decisions about my future. Harold answered on the second ring. Catherine, good to hear from you. How did your meeting with Quantum go? They've offered me a VP position with a significant raise, I replied, reporting directly to Julia. Sounds like they finally recognized your value, Harold said, though it's unfortunate it took a crisis to make it happen. That's partly why I'm calling, I admitted. I'm weighing my options before making a decision. Harold's tone shifted to something more careful. I see. And you're wondering if Westfield might be one of those options? The thought had crossed my mind. There was a brief pause before Harold continued. As it happens, we've been discussing the possibility internally since this morning. Our CTO position has been open for 3 months. We've interviewed several candidates, but none with your specific expertise in financial systems architecture. My breath caught. Chief Technology Officer at Westfield would be a significant step up from even the VP role Quantum had offered. I'd be interested in learning more, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. We could offer a compensation package starting at 20% above whatever Quantum has proposed, plus equity options, Harold said. More importantly, you'd have a seat at the executive table driving technology strategy for the entire organization. It was a compelling offer, especially coming from a company that had consistently valued my expertise. When would you need my decision? I asked. We'd like to move quickly given the circumstances with Quantum, Harold replied. But we also understand this is a significant career decision. Could you let us know by the end of the week? I can do that, I assured him. Would you be able to send over some details about the role and the compensation package? Of course. I'll have HR prepare something immediately. Harold paused, then added, Catherine, regardless of your decision, I want you to know how highly we value your work. You've earned this opportunity through years of exceptional performance. After hanging up, I sat in Stephanie's office, turning over both offers in my mind. The Quantum position offered familiarity and the satisfaction of vindication. The Westfield role represented new challenges and a significant career advancement. I spent the afternoon consulting trusted colleagues in the industry about both companies' reputations and future prospects. By evening, I was leaning strongly in one direction, but wanted to sleep on such an important decision. The next morning, I arrived at Quantum precisely at 9, having requested a meeting with Julia to deliver my decision. She was waiting in her office, tension visible in the set of her shoulders. Have you made your decision? She asked as I took a seat. I have, I replied. I'm declining Quantum's offer. Julia's expression fell. May I ask why? Is there something more we could offer? This isn't about compensation, I explained. It's about organizational culture and values. Yesterday made it clear that Quantum was willing to discard 12 years of loyal service to cut costs. That's not a culture I want to be part of anymore, regardless of my title or salary. Catherine, that was one misguided decision by one executive, Julia argued. It doesn't represent our company values. But it was allowed to happen, I countered. And it would have happened if not for the key person clause in the Westfield contract. How many other valuable employees have been pushed out to save money or earn someone a bonus? Julia had no answer for that. I've accepted a position as Chief Technology Officer at Westfield Technologies, I continued. I'll be overseeing the same integration project, but from the client side. I see. Julia's tone was resigned. Given the circumstances, we won't enforce the non-compete clause in your contract. We'd rather maintain a positive relationship with both you and Westfield going forward. I appreciate that, I said sincerely. I'm prepared to assist with a smooth transition of my projects and to help train my replacement. Garrett has been demoted, Julia informed me. His short-sighted decisions nearly cost us our largest contract. He'll no longer be involved in personnel decisions. The news gave me little satisfaction. The damage had already been done. I spent my final 2 weeks at Quantum, ensuring all my projects were properly documented, and my team was prepared for my departure. Stephanie helped me clear out my office on my last day. I can't believe you're really leaving, she said, packing books into a box. This place won't be the same without you. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I suggested. Maybe this shakeup will help Quantum reassess how it values experienced employees. Maybe Stephanie agreed, though she didn't sound convinced. I've been sending out my resume, by the way. This whole situation made me realize I should explore my options too. Westfield is expanding several departments, I mentioned casually, including client relations. Stephanie grinned. I might just take you up on that hint. As I was carrying the last box to my car, Trevor approached me in the parking lot. I wanted to say goodbye, he said. And congratulations on the CTO position. That's incredible. Thank you, Trevor. I've learned a lot from watching how you handled this whole situation, he continued. With dignity and professionalism, even when the company treated you unfairly. I studied him for a moment. Despite everything, I could see potential in Trevor. He had made mistakes, but he seemed genuinely remorseful. Some advice for your career, Trevor: build people up instead of competing with them. Share credit generously. And remember that true expertise comes from years of solving real problems, not just knowing the latest buzzwords. He nodded earnestly. I won't forget. Good luck, I said, meaning it. Make better choices than Garrett did. As I drove away from Quantum Solutions for the last time, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for the end of a significant chapter in my career, anger at how it had ended, but mostly excitement for the new challenges ahead. The company that hadn't wanted to pay for my experience had ultimately paid a much higher price, losing both me and the respect of their largest client. Meanwhile, I was moving into a role that valued precisely what Quantum had dismissed: my years of expertise and the deep knowledge that only comes with experience. Sometimes rejection truly is redirection to something better. 6 months into my role as Chief Technology Officer at Westfield Technologies, I stood at the podium during our quarterly all-hands meeting, presenting the successful completion of Phase 2 of our integration project. The system was running smoothly 2 weeks ahead of schedule and 12% under budget. "This success belongs to all of you," I told the team of 30 developers and architects I had assembled, many of whom I had personally recruited. "Your creativity, dedication, and collaborative spirit made this possible." From the front row, Harold nodded approvingly. He had taken a chance on bringing me directly into the C-suite, and that investment was already paying dividends beyond the integration project. Under my leadership, we had launched 2 additional initiatives that were transforming how Westfield handled data security and client analytics. The culture I had built within the technology division was deliberately different from what I had experienced at Quantum. We celebrated both innovation and experience, recognizing that breakthrough ideas could come from new graduates and veteran engineers alike. Mentorship was built into our team structure, with explicit recognition for those who helped develop others. After the meeting, Stephanie, who had joined Westfield as Director of Strategic Partnerships 3 months after my arrival, caught up with me in the hallway. "Another successful presentation," she said. "The board is practically throwing money at your department now." I laughed. Amazing what happens when technology is viewed as an investment rather than a cost center. "Have you heard the latest about Quantum?" Stephanie asked as we walked toward the cafeteria. "No, what's happening?" "They lost the Meridian Financial contract last week. Apparently, the replacement team struggled with the specialized requirements. That's the 3rd major client they've lost since you left." I felt no joy in Quantum's struggles, only a sense of validation that my expertise had indeed been valuable. "And Garrett," I couldn't help asking. "Finally fired last month," Stephanie confirmed. "The cost-cutting measures he implemented ended up costing the company millions in lost contracts and rushed fixes. Classic false economy." We grabbed coffee and found a quiet table by the windows overlooking the city. "I ran into Lauren from the old team yesterday," Stephanie continued. "She said morale is at an all-time low. Several senior engineers have left following your example." "It's unfortunate," I said sincerely. "Quantum had good people. They deserved better leadership." Speaking of leadership, Stephanie changed the subject. "Your mentorship program is getting attention throughout the industry. 3 companies have reached out asking how we structured it." The mentorship program had been my first initiative as CTO. It paired experienced engineers with newer talent in a structured knowledge transfer that benefited both parties. Senior staff received recognition and teaching opportunities, while junior members gained valuable insights that accelerated their development. "We should document it as a case study," I suggested. "It might help other organizations avoid the trap of devaluing experience." Later that afternoon, I had a surprising visitor. Trevor Williams had scheduled a meeting through my assistant, listed only as professional consultation. He looked different when he entered my office, more mature somehow, though only 6 months had passed. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, shaking my hand. "I know you must be busy." "What can I do for you, Trevor?" "I've left Quantum," he said, without preamble. "After seeing how everything played out, I couldn't stay in good conscience. The environment became toxic after you left." I nodded but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I've started my own consulting firm focusing on helping companies bridge the gap between experienced architects and newer methodologies," Trevor explained. "Basically trying to prevent other organizations from making the same mistake Quantum did." "That sounds worthwhile," I acknowledged. "I was hoping," Trevor continued, "that you might consider being an informal advisor, not for money or equity, but because I think this work matters. Companies need to understand that innovation and experience aren't opposing forces they have to choose between." I studied him, impressed by his growth. "Send me your business plan. If it's as thoughtful as what you've described, I'd be willing to provide occasional guidance." Trevor's face lit up. "That would be incredible. Thank you." After he left, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The devastating performance review that had seemed like the end of my career had actually been the beginning of something far better. By undervaluing my experience, Quantum had inadvertently pushed me toward an opportunity that truly appreciated what I brought to the table. The lessons had been painful but valuable. Know your worth, and ensure it's documented in contracts and agreements. Build relationships based on mutual respect and recognition of value, not just convenience. When faced with betrayal, respond with professionalism rather than emotion. Sometimes the greatest opportunities emerge from the most painful rejections. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold Board. Approved your department expansion plan. Full budget allocation effective immediately. Dinner to celebrate. I smiled as I typed my reply. At Westfield, my experience wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated and rewarded. The company recognized that true innovation comes not from discarding the old for the new, but from building upon foundations of proven expertise. As I looked out over the city skyline from my corner office, I felt gratitude for the painful lesson Garrett had inadvertently taught me. Sometimes you need to be undervalued in one place to find where you're truly valued elsewhere. Have you ever had your experience undervalued at work? How did you respond? Drop a comment below sharing your story. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about navigating professional challenges with dignity and strength. And remember to share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that their experience has value even when others fail to see it. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply moving forward to greater success.